and welcome back YouTube to another episode of From the Depths after a bit of a hiatus, even though the delays in video production has to do with me not being able to schedule stuff than it has to do with me being on a vacation. But you know, scheduling requires thought, and thinking makes me brains hurt. So yeah, today we're pretty much building out something of a light cruiser. And it is just in post narration. The video is sped up, but hopefully still slow enough for you to see what's going on. Of course, there are also, just important parts. Skipped a lot of the hull building, a lot of the superstructure building and stuff like that, because I mean, you see that one. It's the standard ships of how I build a ship, pretty much starting off, with just building a floor and then kind of layering the biggest weapon system that we're gonna have in the ship, or what I'm thinking that it's gonna be usually vertically the defining size type item we're gonna have in there. So yeah, pretty much very standard beginning of the ship, and as you can see, I'm putting in the large missiles. This type of ship, I pretty much envisioned that it's going to be something of an alternative to the last light cruiser, a very large destroyer, but instead of having guns at the front, having large missiles. Is this kinda better? In certain situations, yes. Missile firepower at the moment, it is quite powerful. I wouldn't say that using large missiles may be the optimal way, even though large missiles do have their advantages. Their damage per minute or per second is usually not that great. Medium-sized missiles, you can just launch so many more of them that they kind of outpace large missiles when it comes down to pure damage or pure potential of damage. However, large missiles are incredibly hard to shoot down, and laser munition systems and stuff like that may really struggle shooting down large missiles. That's why I'm suggesting to anyone who is currently building a ship, putting a couple of large missiles. You don't need a full SWAT of them, but just couple of them down, just to wreak havoc with the enemy munition system, is very worthwhile. Now this ship is kind of focusing on pure missile firepower, so I just went well, let's put as many large missiles as we can in it. Could we put more? Yeah, we could. Now I still wanna have something of a gun on this ship, so I'm also leaving my spells for that. But it is more of a large missile ship. Now it does work. I've done a lot of testing on it. Does work just fine in most situations. There are certain ships in game, vehicles in game, that do cause it a bit of a problems. Ships that have really good anti-distraction devices, if you want to put it that way, on board. Radar target simulators in particular, that can divert the missile attention to other places, and of course that does mean that we're gonna have slightly bit hard time with dealing with those. In those scenarios, guns do tend to be slightly bit better. Now guns do have their ECM problems, but in general, you fire enough of bullets, they tend to, at least a couple of them, hit with missiles. It's more or less it's kind of the same story actually. You fire enough of them, sooner or later they're gonna start hitting. So yeah, of course I do leave space at the bottom, placing up the ammo as low as I can, cladding it in heavy armor. That kinda does the trick for me. Recommendation would be here to actually split the ammo in multiple compartments, but Considering that the size of the vessel, I don't think it would actually work all that well, so I'm just keeping it in a single larger compartment. Technically recommended, yet again, would be that would actually have more ammo on board. This is something I kind of come out during testing, that, well, missiles do consume a lot of ammo, and considering this is a missile ship first, it is on that side just that bit lackluster. But right now the ammo processors still work, so it's a kind of compensation. There are still, things in the game that most likely will change with time. I'm not sure in what direction, and until I don't know, I can't really build in that direction. So I'm keeping it as is. It works for that perspective. Does have enough of ammo spare that it puts down 3 or 4 volleys, and for the rest, ammo processors actually fulfill just enough of a gap to make the ship go through longer fights. Large missiles are of course pretty good at striking up larger targets, but larger targets also require a bit of a prolonged period of time to actually take them out. So yeah, pure damage wise, yeah, this ship will be better than the one we last built. But yeah, guns, as I said, they do have purpose. Especially against, as I said, smaller targets that, especially large missiles, may have pretty hard time hitting. Then of course, once the hull is built and the ammo placed in, I pretty much start placing down the steam engines, because as I said in the past, I'm gonna try to use steam as much as possible, and it's pretty much a very standard steam engine of mine, using 4 reductors and 3 of the pistons. It's gonna give us just enough power for pretty much anything that we want to place on the ship. And yet again, a lot of testing pretty much figured out that we are actually producing too much power, which will, it creates an inefficiency in that, but I think I can forgo with some of it, simply because I kind of want to be on the safe side when it comes down to energy production. And we're gonna lose some extra material as the result. Fine. Currently in the game you do get a lot and lots of material, and I don't think it should be that much of a problem in a campaign, even though, yet again, subject to change. Did play a campaign a bit, yes, you get a ton of material, but it's like the entire campaign at the moment is, in my opinion, kinda broken. So I do hope or suspect that they're gonna keep on working on it to get it kind of fixed. Both times I played it, there were problems with white flare steel striders just taking over the map and starting wars with everyone, and it was just kind of a bizarre situation that I find myself in. So yeah, that I definitely think they're gonna have to continue on improving it. What direction they go, we're gonna have to see. Of course, placing the AI, always try to contain it into something like the stone box kind of frame, so that it's not gonna get affected by the EMP. Surround it with heavy armor, so that potentially a penetrating shot won't kill it immediately, even though, considering currently in the game there are some ships with real high penetration values using rail guns, and you can kind of get over 150 penetration at the moment, which can potentially kill the AI on the ship relatively easily. It can pass through lots and lots of armor, so and I'm not even looking at the ships that can actually withstand hit like that. I don't think there is even one in the game. Even something the size of a megalodon is not fully protected from getting punk shot by a very high penetration round. So On a smaller ship like this, yeah, trying to sufficiently protect it from such a strike, I think it kind of pointless, but you know, I still do what I can to put it inside the heavy armor, put the stone layers around it, and well, cross our fingers, you know, just going too much into the defense. Yeah, let's just keep more firepower. Kind of my motto. Having more firepower always works. Defenses, yeah, they tend not to. Well, tend not to. It's just, you know, a thing of testing and test, see what works, see what does not work, and for the performance, I think, I mean, the ship works just fine, engaging various ranges of targets, even though some of them may cause it a bit more of a problem than others. But yeah, I think as a whole, the ship actually functioned fairly well. Now, one thing that you have to remember with missiles is that they kind of they're not that sensitive to AI being finicky as some other weapons are. Other weapons, you usually place them on turrets. The turrets have to be able to look in the right direction, shoot in the right direction. Missiles in the hull kind of don't care. This is then, of course, goes further with the AI detection system. As long as missiles have some direction of where they ought to go, they'll go that way, and that actually works for them just fine. You know, it's they turn toward the target, and they're gonna then auto strike that target. So that's actually one huge advantage that missiles have in comparative to other type of weapons, and it literally makes missiles even stronger. Missiles are kind of go-to weapon at the moment. They have pretty big alpha strikes. You can get quite decent DPM out of it. They're very reliable when hitting, and they are self-guided. So yeah, that they have quite a lot of advantages. I mean, as it goes down to reliability of weapons, you know, missile is like number one, followed by lasers, then advanced cannons, and last on the list would pretty much be the crime cannons at the moment, which I'm not really sure what they're gonna do with crime cannons. Currently, it just, I mean, at least I'm getting it that they have, like, late game, they just don't have a place at the moment. So we're gonna have to see what they're gonna do. You know, there was actually time, like maybe 1 or 2 years ago, where crime cannons were actually pretty goddamn strong. But those times are gone, and I'm gonna see what they're gonna come up, what they're gonna do. Definitely, any improvements to crime cannons would definitely help certain factions that use crime cannons to a large extent. But you know, we're gonna have to see. Kind of work in progress all the time, I'm guessing. So yeah, missiles, of course. Crime cannons are extremely cheap. Missiles are kind of not. So that's one of the downside that missiles are having. They're quite ammo consumptuous, but they don't, and also the upfront cost is actually pretty high. Even though, like, if the upfront cost and cost to run, I think that railguns actually are kind of in the worst position. Lasers also consume like a lot of material to make them run. I mean, currently that's not really an issue considering the material being very generous in campaigns, but I mean, you never know. Maybe they change the rules up a little bit and, you know, reduce the material gain yet again, and that could swing the entire direction of the way that one should handle its vessels of any kind. So yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm gonna keep on saying, subject to change. We can't tell what in the future going to be, but you're gonna have to see. Of course, placing up medium-sized missiles on the ship, slightly less than we did on the last cruiser. Pretty much, as I said, I think they do more damage per minute and stuff than large missiles are. They're also, because you can swarm them more, they kind of tend to be a tad bit more reliable, more consistent at what they do, comparative. But of course, having signal processor on them would actually help them extra, but I just leave them as they are for now, and we're gonna see if we could have running into trouble with certain targets. We may potentially put an additional on it. Of course, defense of the ship, anti-missile, pretty much only radar target simulators, flares, sonar target simulators, those things work. I do put the laser munition defense system, but against missiles, especially large missiles, as I said, are super strong, super hard to shoot down. Using target simulators to divert their attention someplace else, it's kind of the only way at the moment to do that, and you usually need a pretty big one, and that's why large missiles used as radar target simulators. Pretty much place them there. Later on, of course, put the ABC block if missiles are in range. Launch the weapon. That's pretty standard there. Nothing special, pretty much, and it works. I mean, you test this, it works just fine. And guess we could get more or less, but yeah, it's sufficient. I'm gonna say it like this: it's sufficient, considering the ship size. It's gonna work just fine. Placing down the detection system on the ship, as I said, I'm not really concerned with this vessel, because 99% of the firepower is in its missiles. Missiles are self-guided. Still, some detection is there. I also put the gun on, so the gun will benefit from having more detection system. But yeah, it's a single type, single point detection system, so all of it's on top of the superstructure. All of it gonna get knocked out pretty easily. Now I do put this glass cupola over it, something I actually talked about before, but you can kind of try and protect the detections that you're having, visual cameras. To take note, this only for visual stuff, cameras, laser rangefinders, retroflective sensors. That's the only thing where this works, because the visuals can see through glass. The other type of detection system like radar that cannot. So yeah, you can kind of try and protect it just a tad bit with like a glass cupola in this case, even though let's face it, glass is very weak material at the moment, and it gets destroyed relatively easily. So this is no way being protected well. Usually, if you are placing a lot of visual cameras, rangefinders and stuff like that, you would usually place them like deeper in the hull and then just leave the holes out for where you then place like a 4 beam meter glass panel over it as an additional protection there. But this way of me doing this, it's just more for the aesthetic purposes, and I think it looks good enough, so I'm leaving it. But yeah, as a protection measure, one hit into this glass cupola and it's just gone. Like one missile hit, it blows it like right in pieces. So yeah, considering protection, yeah, not really worthwhile doing it like this. But yeah, as aesthetics, yeah, I'm gonna leave it. It is, All those who ever watched this ship builds of mine, you guys do know that I like to make my ships look like ships. So if that means that I sacrifice some stuff, I'll be fine. One addition, I'm actually also, yes, using the extra propellers both front and back, which does have its advantages, especially if the ship tries to turn while going at very slow speeds. And also the propellers tend to be a bit harder to knock out than rudders are. So yeah, that's actually kind of a benefit. Help the ship turn and make it more reliable to be able to turn when in combat. That's always a good thing. Having, a couple at the front, couple at the back, no matter the size of the ship, it actually goes a long way for your ship to stay in action and not go full stupid from time to time, even though, considering at the moment the AI is still not being particularly smart, that's why it will still go onto island in search of fresh water. But, not exactly something I can fix. Well, I mean, I could. We have the bread boxes now. We could use that for the AI. That, from what I heard, is actually doable, even though I'm not having brains good enough to actually pull it off. But yeah, if you go through into details, I'm pretty sure you could get it for the AI to behave a bit more consistent than what is in-game availability. I just went with a circle ship. Missiles really don't care. As long as they're launched, they will go to the target. So, being our largest source of power, yeah. Now the gun that I'm building, pretty much very simple, 1 meter shell type gun, 90mm. It's good enough. Fragmentation rounds up as well. 300 rounds a minute, nothing special. It's not gonna be not even close on doing a lot of damage, even against like some relatively small like aircraft or stuff like that. If it does not direct hit them, its damage is pretty non-existent. And yeah, this gun more for, yet again, for the aesthetic purposes of having a gun than actually being effective with it. Now I later on did change it just that bit, turn it into a railgun, which of course also required me placing batteries on the ship, but technically it's still the same gun, just rail assisted gun, not full railgun. And actually, like 3 degrees of advanced cannons that you can kind of build, one that requires no energy, then one that are kind of rail assistant like this one, and the one that we also put on the last light cruiser. And then of course there are pure railguns, which do have their advantages of, like, for example, not needing any cooldowns, because well, they don't use any gunpowder. And with no gunpowder, you can then also get away, if you're building like pure kinetic shells, you also will not need any ejectors, which does make your life easier when you are putting in the Tetris to make the gun work proper. And you're pretty much just limited at that point by how many autoloaders you're having. So yeah, the pure railguns do have their advantages. Of course, they're also extremely expensive weapon, just like missiles. Long run, they just consume so much material, it's ridiculous. So I mean, railguns for some time were touted as huge upfront cost, but later on, but the running cost would be lower. That is not the case. The amount of energy consumption and just really high with railguns. You do require quite a lot of like processing in order to energy processing to get them working at what they should be. And you can pull it off. There are definitely guns in the game that have like pure kinetic damage. From that perspective, that's like, you have the Treasure Shark, you have of course the new Megalodon, I think there are a couple of Scarlet Dawn ships that actually also use nothing but railguns, but yeah, they're all very expensive. They consume a lot of energy, and so you have to kind of plan and build the ship about having enough energy production for that. White Flares, yes, White Flares actually have quite a couple of ships that actually use more less than damage penetration type shells. not damage pen. Oh my god, what I'm talking. Hollow point type shells. Steel Striders use hollow point, doing a lot of extensive external damage, kind of like missiles. What missiles do. And I'm actually more with the White Flares. White Flares usually use more armor piercing type railguns, and I'm thinking that might be actually a better way of doing things, simply because for damage purposes, like on this ship we already have a lot of missiles, and I place missiles pretty much on anywhere I have space for them, and that's like prime damage source. It's missiles. Guns, using penetration on the guns to potentially disable certain aspect of the enemy vessel, I think it's just that bit more worthwhile in that direction. But yeah, you can also go, of course, for pure damage source of either hollow point, either using a type of explosive, even though like the explosive does have its drawbacks. Fairly easier to shoot down with LAM system, making your ship potentially explode up. It's a problem up as well. Ammo consumption is not actually that much of an issue, what kind of a shell you're using, but yeah, it just like, yeah, I would still recommend like missiles for pure damage and guns as either a hybrid kind of thing or pure penetration as railguns. Even though, I mean, you can pull it off with gunpowder or on up as well. You just get enough penetration on it, watching that you have enough penetration on it. Yeah, and it's not like you require a humongous amount of penetration on the ship with guns, like large caliber guns like 300 to 400 millimeter. I think you need like 12,000 pure raw damage with like 75-80 armor pen at the moment, and you can punch a lot of the targets in the game. Even stuff like Megalodon. Megalodon does not have, it's big, but its armor is not that over the top. It has a lot of weak spots in it, and being able to disable a turret or two on it, yeah, it actually goes a long way. So yeah, definitely a direction I'll be going toward more, but we're gonna have to see and check and test which one does better in the end. That's how this game works. A lot and lots of testing. Now placing up the laser munition system, pretty standard. Done no testing on it. Just build it up, went into a game and pretty much see how well it responds. And yet again, I'm not like gonna build the best laser munition system, just good enough to divert some of the damage away from the ship, potentially shoot a couple of crime cannons down, shoot a couple of advanced cannons down, shoot some mid-size missiles, light missiles. That's gonna be fine enough, just diverting the damage away. Even though, I mean, with that argument, one could potentially put shields on that I didn't, but yeah, I just like searching like 100% protection from all the enemy action. It's kind of pointless, at least in my opinion. There will be always like a chance of something get through, even though it should not. So it is you kind of good enough kind of section of the things you want to do, in my opinion, when it comes down to defenses. So you have some armor, you have LAM system, you potentially put something extra on it, try to make it more protected, target simulators, as I said, radar target, sonar target, all just kind of diverts the damages away from the ship. Will it absolutely protect it? Well, no. There you're pretty much taking your chances, and it is kind of the measure of size of the vessel you're building. Larger vessels, of course, do have significantly better options at staying alive after taking a hit. Smaller ships, including ships like of this size, it's like below, around 10,000 or so in volume. If they get into a fight with something that has that serious firepower on it, it's gonna take damage. It's gonna suffer. That's just something that's going to happen. Of course, placing the armor processors just across the vessel wherever I can shove them in. There are not enough of them. They will not cover for the entire ammo consumption that we are having on board, but they keep the ship in a fight, and it's good enough. Ammo reserve that we're having 90,000, a bit on a low end considering we're using a lot of large missiles, as I said before, but just giving us enough of a buffer so that the ship fires good 3 or 4 volleys of missiles out before it starts running into a problem, and then of course ammo processors just give it extra enough to go with even through larger, longer battles that we may encounter. And it works. The gun works, as you can see. Missiles work, and of course, even when the ship is not fully completed, you can test it. You can also turn the guard mode on and just test and test some more. That's how you know that your ship or vessel or aircraft or whatever you're building, it's going to work. That's all there is to it. Just do a lot of testing, and in some cases you might get surprised. Maybe something that you didn't really consider that it might potentially work, and it ends up working. You kinda, with some stuff, you kinda know exactly how it's going to work. Like placing munition warners, you just need one in every direction and it will do its job. Placing more of them, it's pretty much redundancy's sake. Does allow the ship to be just slightly bit more resilient to getting hit and losing all of its detection. The same goes with passive radars, sonars. You just place them down, make sure that they can kind of see in every single direction there is, and they're gonna do their job. They're kind of a guarantee will be. On the other hand, a lot of other stuff, it's up to a certain amount of chance. As I said before. And then you pretty much just test it. How bad are those chances of you doing something? And if it works, hey, you got something functional there. Even though I do tend to kind of forgo, the absolute functionality just for a tad bit, of making ships look like ships. Like placing a lot of the detection system on top of the vessel. That's usually not the best way of handling things. As I said, I usually would place them into the side of the hull or something like that, and just cover them deep in the armor, and then just leaving holes for covered in glass for the outside view. And that actually would be a more coherent way of doing things, more efficient way of doing things. And of course there are other things that one could do. It's like compact the entire armor around single spots, so technically the ships would be smaller, and have more of that compactness of material, which does prevent strong AP to penetrate all that well, as well as other types of like explosions and stuff to go through the ship all that quickly. So, you know, there are better ways, what I'm trying to say. There are better ways of building vessels, vehicles in the game than what you're seeing right here. But, you know, I refuse to give in and build kinda in that fashion. So, gonna make my ships look like ships, even though they may not function like that. Which also is something that pretty much causes me problems when I come down to flying things. I want to see my aircraft look like aircraft. that does not turn out very well for me. Yeah, but yeah, testing the laser munition system. Yeah, you see, it works. It's working. So there are quite a lot of those tiny missiles getting shot down. Not all of them. Yeah, of course. The laser, as I said, not perfect. But again, something like light missiles, we also have, of course, our radar target simulators, and setting them right to fire when they see enemy missiles. They gonna do their job. Yet again, not 100%, but most definitely will distract the enemy missiles from hitting us. And there they go. Look at that, straight into the sky and far away from our vessel. And that's how it should be. Of course, you do the same with sonar target simulators, flares, pretty much anything that keeps your ship alive for prolonged periods of time. You know, that's you should, as I said, you should test this stuff, see what works, see what does not work. If you are a simpleton like me and you don't want to go too heavily, well, you have a video right here on how to build something like that. Yeah, but yeah, the end result, I think I've done a decent enough job. 10,500 in volume. Forgot to place in missiles, so doing it pretty much when the ship is already painted. It's like, if you find something to be a weakness on your ship, don't be afraid to change it. It's constant progress. You learn for later. You know, you test stuff, you miss stuff. It's fine. Just, you know, redo, rebuild, do it again. It's kind of constant repetition process going on. And yeah, definitely recommend a lot of testing, a lot of trial, a lot of error. There's pretty much nothing to lose but time. So yeah, and yeah, that's it. Placing a couple of torpedoes. For submarine warfare, pretty much missiles are, well, sometimes you can make them work against submarines up as well, but torpedoes are a bit more reliable with that. But for example, using like a large missiles and just dropping it with a magnet, that can work up as well. Even though it's not something that I would very frequently use, I did actually play with that idea a bit, and it worked. You know, still prefer the torpedoes, more a direct option. It's up to people's preference. Yeah, and currently, yeah, the submarines can be a pain, so putting a couple of torpedoes on board, always a good idea. And as always, do not forget, you know, test stuff and make sure that your guns, weapons systems are properly set up. They have limiters on board, so they don't, you know, potentially shoot your own ship. Well, limiters, constraints, weapon constraints that you have. Those you always just have to pay attention. That's another thing, you know, just make sure that your own weapon is not damaging your own ship. That's really bad. Self-injury, that's the greatest defeat ever. So yeah, doing that on every single vessel, especially when it comes down to things like lasers. It's a really good idea. Torpedoes, in hull placed torpedoes, also have a habit. I think there are a couple of designs currently in the game that actually launch torpedoes on one side of the ship, and then those torpedoes come around and hit straight back at the vessel that fired them. So you should try to avoid that. Yeah, so pretty much, as you can see, final result, added a couple of simple weapons, added of course sonar target simulator, paint. I think it looks pretty decent as a ship. It just kinda like it. Get that helicopter pad at the back, even though not using it. could potentially, you know, put like a small helicopter there. That would be potentially something more aesthetic choice, definitely, than an actual function. And you can see laser munition actually quite effectively stopping even pretty large cram cannons that from the crossbone. Took some damage, but yet again the armor is quite working and has absorbed most of the damage before any of the vitals got hurt. So yeah, you can see that, you know, armor is working, guns working, missiles, they're doing a lot of damage. Perfect, you know, just for fighting the crossbones, fighting the Deputa God, fighting the Onyx Watch, where this type of ship would be most used, needed. Definitely it's doing its job. In my opinion, it looks good. So well, it's not like great looking, but you know, decent enough. It looks like something of a ship, and I'm happy with that. I'm definitely keeping this one. But yeah, as you see, no problems whatsoever dealing with things like crossbone here. And missiles are firing, launching. Just, I mean, I did say that cram cannons at the moment kind of on the weak side, and even though the ship that we're fighting is 3 times our own, even though half the price, yeah, cram cannons are significantly cheaper than compared to missiles. But as a whole, we're winning. We're most definitely winning. So yeah, definitely a decent enough vessel, I'm guessing. Just you know, decent enough, and fighting this type of targets, this is kind of what I wanted. I did test it against other stuff. I tested against white flares, but it does run into certain problems with certain of their vessels. Steel Strider, as I said, Spectre, Banshee causes it slightly bit of an issue, but even something like a Megalodon that does have quite a good defenses, just the sheer size of a Megalodon, missiles tend to hit it sooner or later, and they tend to do damage. So from that perspective, as this size of vessel, as kind of a backbone of the fleet, yeah, most definitely, together with the other one, they're gonna make a very, very decent backbone of the entire fleet. Currently, yes, the ships in game are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but having that stable, relative small size vessel, I think, yeah, definitely going to work. It's not the cheapest vessel, not the best vessel, but definitely a functional one. And pretty much on that note, see ya.